unapologetic, unadulterated, and uncompromising. Greetings, brothers and sisters from around the world, and welcome back to the home, the haven, the stronghold, and the impregnable super fortress of intelligent black thought. This is the BlackChannel.net radio. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. And tonight we have a few things on our mind here. I'm going to try to make tonight's broadcast as brief as I can because, of course, the work continues unabated on the most important documentary of all time, 7 a.m. And what I will tell you all right now is that you will have a release date in the very near future. But there is a special way that I want to announce this. Because, you see, we want to do this the right way. And we want to put the world on notice. So there's a certain way you gotta do it if you're gonna do it right. So understand something. I'm just gonna say two things to you here. I'm gonna say, bring the band. And I'm gonna say, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. And that's all I'll say for now. But I will tell you that much. Now, going over the news, going over stories, going over other things here, I came across an article earlier today, and I told everybody I want to talk about this. It comes from theexaminer.com from George Fish, identified as Indianapolis Economic Policy Examiner, whatever in the hell that means. Dated November 6, 2014 at 2:05 p.m. Headline, I'm white and poor. If that makes me privileged, then my anus is green. Now, aside from the absolutely disgusting inferences there, why you would say anything like that in polite company, but okay. Story goes on to say, and like a lot of poor whites, I certainly feel insulted by being scolded that I'm, quote, privileged, that I'm an automatic congenital beneficiary of white privilege, especially when so much of this scolding comes from far better off white people, people immune from knowing hunger, unemployment, and fear of becoming homeless. Scolding from people who don't have to worry about being able to pay their bills. Scolding from people who don't have to worry about having food on the table. People whose romanticizing of African Americans lies in inverse ratio to their trashing of poor and working class whites as congenitally, incurably racist. I had hoped to go back to work under restrictions accepted as reasonable accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act, but that was denied by my employer. My forced resignation because of medical reasons was demanded instead. Now, after 3 weeks of unpaid sick leave, which followed on less than 2 weeks on the job before I had to take the leave, which followed further on being unemployed for nearly 2 months, I'm in the most unenviable situation of having to find employment as soon as I can, and searching for such employment while under medical restrictions on the work I can perform. In a tight job market, when I'm down to my last $22 until my Social Security comes in again on December 3rd, which definitely isn't going to get me through November. When, on top of all that, my 5-year-old glasses frames broke, so I'm doing a rock and roll legend Roy Orbison imitation by wearing my alternate pair prescription sunglasses, something likely not to be acceptable on a job and hardly good to wear to a job interview, but I can't afford new frames, much less a new eye exam. And if that weren't enough, there's also being verbally assaulted as inevitably, inescapably possessing white privilege simply because of the color of my skin. Judging someone by the color of one's skin, isn't that the definition of racism? TBA interjection. No, dummy. Continuing. This habitually asserted by African American black cultural nationalists of my acquaintance, along with certain of their white allies, even in face of my hurt, chagrin, and yes, humiliation due to the above. A little sensitivity here, please. His words, not mine. The only good thing in all this is at least my rent's paid because of my Social Security received November 3rd, and my heating gas is assured for the month because I also paid that bill out of Social Security. My Social Security, the mere $839 a month that stands between me and homelessness, even when I'm working because I have to rely solely on temp agencies for poorly paid work. But due to all the obligations that have come out of it, the Social Security only gets me through the first few days of the month. Now, I want you to think about what you just heard there, because that's going to be important, and we're going to come back to that in a little bit. But that's the first 3 paragraphs, not complete 3 paragraphs, but the first 3 paragraphs of his screed going on here. And I want you to remember what you just heard there. That he's saying that he's been unemployed for a couple of months, can't afford new glasses, is very humiliating, is very belittling to him. Money doesn't stretch far enough. All right. My Social Security, the near $839 a month that stands between me and homelessness, even when I'm working because I have to rely on temp agencies for poorly paid work. But due to all the obligations that have to come out of it, the Social Security only gets me through the first few days of the month and will not get me through at all on the later in the month electricity and phone internet bills. But even try to do a job search without internet and a phone. So, without work, my only option is to become a cringing beggar boy and make desperate appeals to friends who've helped me in the past because they condescend to poor, demented, idiot savant George, but whose help comes at the cost of psychological usury. See, I better bow and scrape like a medieval peasant before the lord of the manor if I even want a dime. But all of that makes me privileged. Gives me as much white privilege as it does the Koch brothers, Mitch McConnell and John Boehner. Yeah, sure. Now back to the color of my anus. His words, not mine. He goes on to say, but yes, while whites often can be openly racist and even virulently so, this is far from giving them some special privilege. This is far from being a benefit to them, is far from a psychological bonus they not only receive but profit from. Rather, as far as I'm concerned, white racism is a severe liability, a delusional sense of superiority, a pernicious illusion that binds them not only to the commonalities of oppression they share with their brethren of color, but makes them dupes of Occupy's 1%, really 0.01%, the 1%, or rather 0.01%, who comprise those corporate and financial elites and their satraps who manipulate far too many ordinary white people as puppets, who set them against people of color as often eager attack dogs, but who are still tightly leashed by the 1%. White privilege is thus an often unacknowledged liability that undermines the white working class every bit as much as it oppresses African Americans. White privilege is thus an often unacknowledged liability that undermines the white working class every bit as much as it oppresses African Americans. Further, while white people can be said to have a relative advantage in quotations, he puts advantage in quotations now, in many but not all cases vis-a-vis African Americans, this is far from an absolute, quote, privilege that ensures whites always come out on top, are always psychologically satisfied, materially sated, and economically secure, no matter what their socioeconomic status. Now, let me reread that one more time. He says, further, while white people can be said to have a relative advantage in many, but not all, cases vis-a-vis African Americans, this is far from an absolute privilege that ensures whites always come out on top, are always psychologically satisfied, materially sated, and economically secure, no matter what their socioeconomic status. Here, I want particularly to thank fellow left-wing writer Barry F. for suggesting use of the relative, quote, advantage in place of the absolute privilege as a much more accurate delineation, especially since it accords to the actual dictionary definitions and connotations of the words. So, quote, white privilege is a misnomer, a badly conceived term that overstates what is actually a white comparative advantage in many but not all cases, especially as involves the lower rungs of the socioeconomic ladder, where poor and somewhat better off working class whites are pitted against poor and working class blacks and Hispanics for the measly and diminishing scraps thrown at them by the Occupy 1%, and where racism ends up a divisive force that pits natural allies against each other for who will get to eat these scraps. And in this regard, we should also not overlook black racial animus against Hispanics or Hispanic racial animus against blacks. Now, notice how he slipped that in there. Notice how he slipped that in there, by the way. That's just a way of wedging in that we're all the same. I just wanted to acknowledge that before I go any further. But that's just his way of trying to wedge in there. See, we're all the same. We are all equal in our ability to be quote-unquote racist toward each other. By the way, that we all have equal ability to deny each other the scraps, even though he just clearly told you that they already have a built-in competitive advantage. And yet he wants to moan to you that somehow somebody else is equally as powerful, because that's what equal powerlessness would mean, that you're all equally powerful. But he's already stated that his group has a built-in advantage over everybody else. Yeah. This is like saying that we're all going to have to walk on glass today. But I've got my old pair of tennis shoes. They're old and raggedy. Yeah, but the black folk are wearing socks. We're wearing socks and you're wearing shoes. But we're all going to have to walk over glass here in just a moment. So I long to substitute the invidious misnomer white privilege, which is bound to feel insulting to people who barely have even a pot to urinate in, or not even that, with the above white comparative advantage as a more accurate description of the evils stemming from white racism or white chauvinism, which the white poor and working class benefit from only in a delusory psychological sense, which means white people deluding themselves about their racial superiority, even as their comparative white advantage may make them only one or two rungs above blacks or Hispanics on the socioeconomic ladder, but where they are still in danger of falling off. He puts an exclamation point behind that. It may make them only one or two rungs above blacks or Hispanics on the socioeconomic ladder, but where they are still in danger of falling off. Now, before you think this guy's starting to lean towards egalitarianism, next paragraph, I also find white privilege to be a racially charged, derogatory term often used by economically secure middle-class and upper-middle-class whites to deliberately disparage those fellow whites who are below them on the socioeconomic ladder and who are thus ignorant, uncouth, in quotations, and in some cases, quote, really not much better off than blacks themselves. This often presents itself in, quote, left radical guise, arising historically out of the New Left of the 1960s, which was an anomaly as far as left radical social movements are concerned. An anomaly because it was a rebellious movement primarily of middle class and upper middle class students and student hangers-on, without any significant movement among the working class, quite unlike the movements of the late 19th and early 20th centuries or the 1930s. Now, I'm skipping down a bit here to get to where he says here near the end, where he says he gives a bunch of stuff about white privilege and where the terms come from, and basically walks you through the 20th century to the 1960s. But then he says, so here enters into the fray myself, a veteran of SDS. Now, for those of you who don't know, SDS was Students for a Democratic Society. This was one of the 60s white student movements. A veteran of SDS of lower middle class background, who's now become a rather disenchanted member of the current left, seeing derivative, uncritically adopted dogma from the new left past become undeservedly dominant in the highly marginalized and decidedly uninfluential left of today, seeing in this uncritically adopted dogma a major contributor precisely to this marginalization and lack of influence. Among these stands the notion of white privilege, which actually masks rather than exposes the continuing, quite messy interplay of racism and socioeconomic class in U.S. society today, for all those reasons I give above. This is especially driven home for me by what I see as an unholy alliance between upper middle class white radicals and certain strains of black nationalism. This is something I wrote about in my previous article, A Bad Forum Advocating a Really Horrible Idea. Both groups uncritically see all whites, even the white poor and just getting by white working class, as hopelessly contaminated by privilege achieved through racial benefit, automatically by dint of white skin privilege, and unlike African Americans, all whites, even the poor and the just getting by, are allegedly living the life of Riley, which Webster's New Collegiate Dictionary defines as, quote, a carefree, comfortable way of living. I'm going to read these last couple of paragraphs here. I'm not going to go on because he prattles on for a while, but this rankles me personally, as I've been poor, and my now receiving a small Social Security payment only makes me just getting by. Therefore, this alleged living the life of Riley due to white privilege is something neither I nor most of my white friends here in Indianapolis possess. For they, like me, are uniformly college graduates over the age of 50, many of them people laid off permanently from their previous good employment, who now are stuck making a precarious living from various temp jobs for low wages, often unable to find work for significant periods of time between jobs. No, contrary to what one of these well-off radicals once asserted to me, I wish I had your time for reading. An involuntary layoff is decidedly not a vacation, and while there may be some extra time to catch up on reading, there's also, unfortunately, ample time as well to worry where the next badly needed job is going to come from, as well as the anxiety ever present of, quote, just how am I going to pay my bills? Further, these upper middle class radicals, whether they recognize it or not, are just expressing their hoary, H-O-A-R-Y, social class animus toward lower class whites, and remind me very much of that historical disdain old money had for the nouveau riche, upstarts without breeding or culture, for whom money is a corruption, not a blessing, as it is instead for those who have already gotten it and had it for a long, long time. There's also a deliberate racial and ethnic bias reflected in those terms, especially reserved for lower class whites. White trash, trailer trash. I'm not really a person who goes into racial slurs, everybody, but I will just, that's why I'm not going to do it here. I'm not really a person who goes into racial slurs, but he does go into a few of them here. One that rhymes with Deckerhood. Slick, funky, Polak, kraut. I guess I can get away with that one. For Italians, meat wall, sleaze wall. I guess that's close enough. Dago, without papers, the acronym for without papers, which is where that term really comes from, WOP, without papers. To pejoratively denote anyone not of pedigreed Anglo-Saxon ancestry. And so they of the upper classes who consider themselves noblesse oblige, social reformers and radical reconstructors of society latch on to African Americans the way Rousseau latched onto the noble savage, the pure, unalloyed soul saved from corruption precisely because of their social exclusion from ordinary society. Let me read that one more time. And so they of the upper classes who consider themselves noblesse oblige, social reformers and radical reconstructors of society latch on to African Americans the way Rousseau latched on to the noble savage, the pure, unalloyed soul saved from corruption precisely because of their social exclusion from ordinary society. The noble savage. The noble savage. As for certain black nationalists of my acquaintance, just as they can argue appropriately that there exists among many whites a white blind spot that makes them unaware or inadequately aware of non-white cultures, societies, and social strata, so do I argue that there exists among them a black blind spot. A black blind spot that makes them unaware also of white people in the U.S. in all their messiness, differentiation, and caste-like strata that makes many a black nationalist see white people as this undifferentiated monolith, this massive, uniform white glacier moving inexorably to crush them. But yes, as the KI panelist Khalil, is that KI or KL? I think that's KI. Mentioned in my previous Examiner post, admonished, I should know more about important black figures such as Marcus Garvey and Denmark Vesey, although I'm far from ignorant of either, but he should also know more about important white figures such as Eugene Debs, H.L. Mencken, and Clarence Darrow. And as far as Eurocentric history is concerned, I pointedly note that recorded history is usually the history of victors, and while it is important for whites to know more about the many slave revolts throughout the early 19th century U.S. history, the truth is all of these revolts ended in defeat for their participants. Yes, more that is underground history should be brought above ground, but it's still going to be Eurocentric in the sense that it can only be a chronicle of unfortunate defeats as much as it can be a history of admirable resistance. I'm going to stop there. Brothers and sisters, the Black Channel was the only place. We were the only place on earth that said this to you not 1, not 2, not 3, 4 years ago. We laid it out for you exactly what was going to happen going into the 21st century. We told you that at the end of the first decade of the 21st century, it was going to be a whole new thing. We warned you that it was going to be a whole new ball game. And a lot of people did not want to believe that. A lot of people wanted to think that, no, we can just sit down now. You fell for the bait. You fell for the ambrosia of your fathers and your mothers cowering the corners of the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement did not want black empowerment. As a matter of fact, many of the icons of the civil rights movement, particularly going into the late 60s, early 70s, were virulently against black empowerment. They were the ones talking against Malcolm X, against the Panthers. They were anti-black empowerment, any and every which way you slice it. They were against black empowerment. They did not want it because their goal was integration, not industrialization. Their goal was appeasement, not empowerment. They demanded inclusion, not empowerment. They didn't want any part of empowerment because as far as they were concerned, black empowerment was and is worthless. Black empowerment is worthless to them, and it is worthless to them because in their eyes, if white people did not give it to them, then it has no value. And this is why black people have been so quick to give up our culture, to give up our dance. You know, in Japanese, and my anime people out there, my cartoon people, my comic book people who know exactly what I'm talking about, especially the cartoon people. You see, America, Anglo-Americans may have invented animation. They may have invented cartoon animation. But the Japanese perfected it. And when they made it, they called it anime. But you'll know something. Japanese anime looks very, very different from, if you take a look at American animation of the 1980s and Japanese animation of the late 70s to 1980s, you'll notice that it had a totally different look from American animation. Totally different look. Much higher quality. Totally different look. And before long, the American companies started mimicking what the Japanese did. The Japanese did not try to copy American comic books. They made their own style called manga, which has the trademark giant eyes and little mouths on people. Even though, as we all know, Orientals actually have much narrower eyes, but in their comic books, they did not draw it the same way. In their comic books, they don't draw it the same way. They draw the eyes very large and very pronounced. That's what they do in their books. Even though that is actually antithetical to the reality, but it was the style that they had created. And before long, American comic book artists started doing that as well. Now, we're going to take just a very brief break here, and I'm going to explain to you all exactly what that means and what the context is of that for you. This will be a very short break here, and you can start to think for yourselves why this is important at this date in time in history. This is the BlackChannel.net Radio, and we'll be right back. Yes, sir. You thought it was the 21st century. You thought white privilege was extinct. I mean, that's the crazy part about it. The crazy part about it is there are a lot of you out there who actually believe that he's right, that white privilege is extinct. There are a lot of you who believe that, and that's why you've been so quick to abandon and sacrifice your culture, sacrifice your innovations. This is why the white corporate establishment is able to come in and buy everything that black people have wholesale because black people believe the white corporate establishment doesn't believe that anything is more valuable than money. And black people believe that there is something more valuable than money. Black people have found something that to black people has more value than money. White acceptance has more value than money, more value than gold, more value than life itself. Acceptance. So there are many of you who will actually go along and play along with this because he's holding out that carrot of we're all the same. The problem is we're not. First of all, for a fellow who claims that he was formerly a member of the SDS, Students for a Democratic Society, this kind of sheds light on a lot of those, quote, 60s left-wing groups, doesn't it? Patty Hearst, Gloria Steinem. Notice they all had their little agendas, but none of them would come out against white supremacy. The black members, the black folk they were hanging out with were talking about white supremacy. Those people were saying nothing about it. Nothing. Nothing. And now he wants to jump up here 40 years later, and he's still not taking white supremacy to task. There are no black overlords. That's the first discrepancy in what he's saying. There are no black overlords. There are no black power brokers exercising power over white people. There are none. There is no systematic black supremacy anywhere on earth. And he wants to tell you all that the fact that he hasn't been able to get the kind of job he wants didn't say he can't get a job because he cannot get the kind of job he wants, that somehow means he's in the same boat with us. Let me tell you something here, me bucko, Mr. Fish. First of all, yes, you do have white privilege. You were born with it, you lived with it, you'll die with it according to the census numbers. And that is because, if you'll all notice, everything he mentioned was coming back to money. Because that is how the white elite establishment defines the world. That is the prism and the perspective through which they see things is power. And the power is in the money. So how much money you have directly correlates to how much power you have. Hey, this is the black channel. You know I understand that. I can dig it. But here's the problem, brothers and sisters from around the world. You see, what he refused to acknowledge was that racism is a system. And it is a system that black people are summarily excluded from because we lack power, wealth, and influence as a group. We lack power, wealth, and influence as a group. Trademark, by the way. And since black people lack power, wealth, and influence, we can be upset, but we cannot be racist. It is impossible for us to be so. Now, as a white person, you are a part of the group. You are a member of the group that have power, wealth, and influence. Case in point, he said that he's needed to borrow money and whatnot from friends. He's needed to borrow money from friends. Now, remember, brothers and sisters, if you all want to know, this is the foundation and the basis for a group economy. This is the reason that you establish group economics and why economics do and must move along ethnic lines, which is what everybody else does except black folk. We move our economy along our inferiority complex lines. And that means we go looking for massa. But The reason why group economics is so fundamental is because what that does mathematically, it reduces the degrees of separation between you and the money that you have just spent. As long as maybe you can't spend that money with your family or your friends, but as long as you spend that money among members of your ethnic group, and as long as members of your ethnic group practice group economics, there will always be fewer degrees of separation between you and that money. In his case, there is only 1 degree of separation between the dollars he spent and his ability to borrow or get dollars from another white person. As he has just conceded and explained here, 1 degree of separation. Just 1. If you want to know what Dr. Claude Anderson spent 30 years preaching about and screaming about, what Dr. John Henry Clark died talking about, and so many other martyrs before him, to a stiff-necked, deaf, cowardly people. If you want to know why, that's what it was about. That they understood this is mathematics, and that these other groups have reduced the degrees of separation between the dollar they just spent and where it went. And thus, you have access to that money again as long as you do not let the money move too many degrees of separation from you. Because once that dollar leaves your community, you have just made it where it's going to be another 40 or 50 steps before it makes its way back, if it ever does. Because black people right now, since we don't practice group economics, we are thus dependent on all the other groups who do practice group economics. We are sitting here blind, deaf, dumb, stupid, crazy, and dependent on the groups who do practice it because we outright refuse. So for us, there are 30 or 40 degrees of separation between us and the dollar we just spent. And every black person, you can get money at your job, but when a black person needs to borrow money, they usually have to go looking for a white person to go borrow it from, a payday loan place or some garbage like that. Black folk can't even go to friends or family to borrow money. Why? Because everybody in black society is practicing anti-group economics. That's why. Everybody in black society is refusing to practice any type of group economics. That's why we can't get anywhere. That's why the money doesn't come back. That's why it doesn't move back to you. Because you are not acting in a appropriate manner, as Dr. Claude Anderson said. Our money exits the black community, never to return. So you see, part of his white privilege is that he has a group of people who have been born, bred, instructed, trained, and formally educated in the practice of group economics. Now, it's not that black folk cannot do that one. That's an advantage that we could counter, but that's just one. Second of all, this talk about racism. First of all, it is physically impossible for a black person to be racist, as I explained before. Racism is a group power dynamic, not an individual dynamic. You see, the sleight of hand that he tries to play here is that his individual white status is somehow separate from his group member status. That the fact that he is not a Rockefeller or a Vanderbilt or a Ford is somehow correlates that he is on the level of black people in America. Because he's not on the level of Bill Gates, he is on the level of black folk. That's what he would have you believe. And the problem is that white privilege is not merely an economic construct. White privilege is a socio-economic construct, a social construct bolstered by economics. founded on economics. You see, Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, Sean Bell, Michael Brown, Jordan Russell Davis, Oscar Grant, Rodney King, Amadou Diallo, y'all get the point. You get the point. You see, that was what happened to them, was racism. And you notice that he didn't mention that. All he wanted to talk about was, well, you see, I'm economically strapped in relation to white people at the top. Therefore, I'm on the level of black folk. You see, I'm struggling economically too. But the problem is, when he goes for a job, he's got the advantage and he knows it. And that advantage is a privilege. Because if we are both equally qualified, but you have an advantage walking in the door, that is a privilege. He wants to move the word from privilege to advantage. No, sir, that is white privilege. You have the privilege of knowing that you got the advantage in every situation. When he walks into Barney's in New York, nobody's following him around. He's a poor white, I'm a poor black, and yet his white privilege elevates him. His white privilege elevates him. That's what he says. That he's on our level simply because he's not able to buy things that he wants. He's not able to buy the things that he wants. So that connotes to him having white privilege. To him not having white privilege. Hey, I'm just like you. Hey, I'm just like you. Red herrings intended for the purposes of blinding black people from the simple and obvious truth. If you are desirous to go along with that, if you are desirous to go along with that. Okay, let's see. Give me just a moment here. I'll be having a talk with my mods here tonight after tonight's broadcast, since apparently there's some issues here. We'll see if we can get that resolved. But as black people, when you're gunned down by the police, how many white folk are getting gunned down by the police? How many white people are applying for jobs and how many black folk have an advantage at an employer day in and day out? How many black people have that? You don't have that. These are things that are not financially related, but are bolstered by the socio-economic system. And they will play this sleight of hand with you. That white privilege, it also extends to quality of life. They are not being harassed by police, white or black. There are no black police officers out there racially profiling white folk. Not happening. There are no white people out there being racially profiled like that. None. None. There are none doing that. So, as a member of white privilege, he understands that. He understands that, which is why he stayed away from the subject of things. The stuff that black folk talk about is oppression. And you notice he stayed away from all that. He just wanted to stay on, well, I don't make as much money as you. But then he turns around and acknowledges that he has advantages. If he has advantages, then he has privileges. These are things he did not earn and things he did not work for. These are not advantages that he earned. When you have an advantage that you earned, that's called a characteristic. That's called an achievement. But these are not characteristics that he earned. These are characteristics that he possesses by virtue of simply being born. And now you've got, in the 21st century, they are coming out more stridently. As I told you all before, you are going to see a cultural shift because for the last 40 years, white people have not called themselves white. Now you've got everything from this guy here, from Poe whites to United States senators, vice presidential candidates. Senator Lindsey Graham, white men will do great under my administration. Sarah Palin, sitting up here talking about, Dr. Laura saying nigger all over the place. And what did she do? She co-signed it. No, they're not playing about this. They are starting to close ranks because you see, the tolerance among white society to suffer is very shallow. Their tolerance for doing without, their tolerance for oppression is very shallow. They don't have any tolerance for it whatsoever. Their tolerance for doing without, their tolerance for being held at a disadvantage is very low. Very, very low. Black folk will wait until they're bummed out, no shoes, no shirt, or nothing. White folk take action as soon as things start looking bad. They start taking action. They're not going to wait until it gets to a detrimental standpoint. They start taking action early on. They start taking action early on. They start letting you know early on, people here, that they are not going to just sit back and wait until the situation gets terrible. They're not going to tolerate that. Black folk, on the other hand, will just sit there and just let it keep rolling on. That's what black folk will do. And that's why I told you that they're not going to be like us. They're not going to just sit there and wait for the situation to reach a critical mass. They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. So you are hearing the rationales that they tell themselves. Remember, it's just like that documentary that PBS is going to be putting out about white folk and more white delusions of grandeur. That they're talking about, oh, I'm oppressed. People don't like my tattoos. Your tattoos were a personal choice. That has no comparison. That has no equating whatsoever with police gunning you down because you're white. The worst thing that happens to white folk is they meet another white person. These aren't things being done to them by black people. The worst problem that the average white person has is that there are white people who do not like what they're doing. That's the worst thing. Now, there is no oppression of white people coming from black folk. And that documentary, unless it's a damn lie, will simply substantiate that. But you can't equate having tattoos to that was a personal choice that you chose and had a decision to make, and whether you did it or not, to being equal to a black person's incidental characteristic of being born black, something that they have absolutely no control over and cannot disperse, get rid of, or otherwise hide. We have no way of doing that. They are trying to tell you that having tattoos is equal or equivalent to you being black. Now that is spitting in your face. That's a damn insult. But that's the worst they can cobble together. And they say with a straight face, I make $895 on Social Security. I'm just like you, brother. I'm just like you, brother. When I go for a job, I know I got an advantage, but you see, all I can be hired on is the manager. It's not like they're gonna make me CEO. I can't get hired on at all. Call me back when you can't get hired on at all and the person across the table from you was black. Holla back at me when that happens. Let me know when that occurs. And the answer is it doesn't and it won't. It does not and it won't. As black people, we have a choice to make in the 21st century. We can keep repeating the same old mistakes, the same old fraudulence that our ancestors made and our forebears in the previous generation. We can keep repeating their mistakes, or we can choose to do something different and something smarter. Because I am telling you all right now, they are closing ranks. Going into the 21st century, they are closing ranks. And this screed that he went on was nothing short than saying that I have nothing to apologize for being white, and however I get what I get is fair game. That what happens to you folks is just you didn't work hard enough or try hard enough. And whatever I get is fair game. He talks about the upper echelons. He does not talk about the upper echelons as being white power. He doesn't talk about them that way. He just talks about, well, there's rich whites penalizing poor whites. But he's not trying to do anything, nor is he suggesting that we do anything to destabilize the white supremacist power structure. And that is because his ultimate goal is to replace the white overseers currently at the top with himself. That's the goal. His goal is not equal empowerment for all. His goal is to replace the white overseers at the top with himself. And his entire piece there was an argument for, he didn't say we should destroy the upper echelons. He didn't say we should overthrow the upper echelons. He just explains to you that, well, they oppress all of us the same. But like Joe the plumber, he does not present to you any solution or remedy that will remove the upper echelons. That he won't do. He just wants to replace Calvin Candy with Calvin Johnson. He wants to move us, he wants to turn the Calvin Candy plantation into the George Fish plantation. But his goal is not to destroy or remove the plantation altogether. That he is not suggesting we do. Do you recognize that? Some people are living in denial of that. And you are currently up against a group of people who are fighting to beat the band on this. 5 hours ago, Yahoo White Supremacist Sports News by Nick Bromberg. Dover police investigating allegation of domestic assault against Kurt Busch. Kurt Busch is being investigated by the Dover, Delaware Police Department for allegations of domestic assault. Now, he's a NASCAR race driver, okay? Kurt Busch is a NASCAR race driver, for those of you who don't know. Busch's ex-girlfriend, Patricia Driscoll, filed the claims November 5th, according to the police department. Per court documents obtained by the AP, Driscoll said the alleged assault happened on Friday, September 26th. The Sprint Cup Series was in Dover that weekend, and Busch was eliminated from the chase after the race on Sunday, September 28th. The Dover PD issued a statement confirming the investigation Friday. From the AP, the documents filed Wednesday say Busch was despondent the night of September 26th after his poor performance at the qualifying race. Quote, he was verbally abusive to her and said he wished he had a gun so that he could kill himself, the documents say. Driscoll said Busch, 36, called her names and accused her, quote, of having spies everywhere and having a camera on the bus to watch him. He then jumped up, grabbed her face, and smashed her head 3 times against the wall next to the bed, the documents say. The AP story says that Busch and Driscoll had ended their relationship, which began in 2011, approximately a week earlier. Driscoll also says in her claim that she ran from Busch's motorhome, where the alleged incident occurred, and went to a nearby bus. She's also seeking a protection order against Busch and requesting that he receive a psychiatric evaluation. A hearing is set for December 2nd. Through a statement from his attorney, Rusty Hardin, Busch denies the allegations and said they were a complete fabrication. Hardin has represented Minnesota Vikings running back Adrian Peterson and former MLB pitcher Roger Clemens. The Dover Police Department has been informed that Mr. Busch will fully cooperate with their investigation, and he expects to be vindicated when the entire truth of the situation comes to light. Hardin's statement said, this allegation is a complete fabrication by a woman who has refused to accept the end of a relationship, and Mr. Busch vehemently denies her allegations in every respect. At this time, we intend to have no further comment in the media out of respect for the Dover Police Department's desire to conduct a thorough investigation without a media circus. Stewart Haas Racing, Busch's team, said it was gathering facts Friday afternoon before Hardin's statement was issued after the first practice session of the day. NASCAR also issued a statement. NASCAR is aware of the investigation involving driver Kurt Busch. We recognize the seriousness of this matter and are actively gathering information from all parties, including law enforcement authorities and Stewart Haas Racing. It would be inappropriate for NASCAR to comment further on this matter until we have more information. After finishing 8th at Texas last week, Busch is 14th in the Sprint Cup Series standings. Before the race at Texas, Stewart Haas Racing switched the teams of he and teammate Danica Patrick in an effort to prepare for 2015. The Cup Series races at Phoenix on Sunday. In 2005, Busch was suspended for the final 2 races of the year while at Roush Racing following a driving incident while leaving the track. Busch was ultimately cited for reckless driving. Busch, the 2004 Cup champion, was set to leave Roush at the end of the season and join Team Penske for 2006. In 2011, after an outburst towards an ESPN reporter at the final race of the season, Busch said he began working with a sports psychologist. Not really sure what that would be for, but he said he began working with a sports psychologist. Now, brothers and sisters, over the last summer, there was much screaming, much howling, much caterwauling about black athletes. The NFL, Yahoo White Supremacist Sports, went on a jihad. If you were a black male in the NFL and you were not sweeping the floors, Yahoo, ESPN, and everybody else was after after you. They were letting you know white supremacy is back, it's bad, and it's bold, and we're coming after you. Now, I want to read for you all. Now, since so many people had so much to say about the thugs in the NFL, I want to just read for you all the comments. That's right, Yahoo comments. I want to read for you all some of the comments in here, okay? I want to read for you all some of the comments here. Just wondering, if they ended their relationship a week earlier, what was she doing in the motorhome so far away from her home? Did I miss something? Somebody responds to him, she set him up. Somebody responds after that, he needs a restraining order from her. Somebody responds after that, only reason I can think of is she worked for the team in some capacity, otherwise they both need a psychologist. Another person says, a few years ago, an NFL quarterback was accused of rape by 2 different women in 2 different cities, and another NFL quarterback was accused of sending photographs of his genitals to a woman who was not his wife. In the last months, a professional hockey player and a baseball player were accused of domestic abuse. The incidents received little media coverage. I wonder why some professional athletes receive major media coverage and others don't. That's called white privilege. Somebody should contact Mr. Fish and appraise him to what white privilege is, since he apparently feigns ignorance in this. He's apparently claiming ignorance of it. Think somebody needs to contact him and let him know. Those are my words right now, by the way. Next person's comments. The saddest part related to this and any other male's worries. A woman can make a claim and the first impression is they are guilty. There are some very evil women that have and use this as an avenue to try to get revenge. What's worse is these women that come out months and years after such things to claim victims. We always hear that they feared for their safety or feared more punishment, yet stayed even longer to eventually receive more. Sorry, but every woman does have the capacity to know that being beaten once or multiple times is not what was meant to be. Next comment. By no way am I a KB fan. But I think they're referring to the driver, Mr. Bush. But if this happened in September, why is she just filing now? Something doesn't add up with what I've read. Next comment. You shouldn't make assumptions about this unless you choose to assume that Bush is innocent or his ex-girlfriend is just after money. It is okay to assume that, according to the Yahoo readers at least. Next person. This, unlike many of the other domestic abuses in the news lately, sounds completely made up. This, unlike many of the other domestic abuse cases in the news lately, sounds completely made up. Unless I missed something, this is a pure he said, she said case. She never went to a hospital for her injuries, nor did she report it until months later, now that it is a hot button issue. There appears to be no evidence except her word. Assuming this is a fabrication, people like her are worse than the men that beat women because they are enablers. They allow abusive men to get away because there are too many phony made-up stories like this. I don't know if she's looking for her name in the paper or looking for a large cash settlement, but either way, if no other evidence arises, I hope she gets charged for filing a fake police report. So, what this guy is saying is, all the other reports that you've seen in the news, those were real. Every other thing that you've seen, all the other white supremacist attacks, those were real. Those were substantiated. But this one involving a good old boy with NASCAR, this, of course, with no other proof whatsoever, none whatsoever. You don't have anything superior to anybody else, but good old boy is accused, and we must assume that he is innocent. We must assume it. Now, brothers and sisters, I'm reading individual comments. I'm going down the line, except for the ones that were responding to that one commenter. But I'm just reading to you comment after comment after comment. I'm not a fan of his in any way, but I am not a fan of an ex fabricating abuse allegations either. This is what another commenter is saying. Maybe if she had reported it at the time of a real assault, not a month or so later. Where are the facts? Next commenter. Really none of our business, especially since they are allegations from the fame and money-seeking expletive he was dating. She never expletive about Bush. Gonna have to prove Kurt did anything to warrant this. Come back when you got some hard factual evidence. Go Kurt Busch. Good luck at Phoenix this weekend, man. Next commenter. I'm going down the list, everybody. I'm going straight down the list. I'm not skipping anything here. In the last 10 posts, on the last 6-7 posts, I haven't skipped anything. I'm not skipping anything. I'm just going from one to another, to another, to another. Next, 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 next. That's all I'm doing. The part, next commenter. The part that he allegedly said that he wanted to kill himself after qualifying sounds a little fishy to me. These guys don't put that much stock in how their car qualifies, because it has little to do with how the car will race and what the track conditions will be like during the race. The media is making it sound like this allegedly happened after the race. So to imply Kurt was dejected after being eliminated from a championship bid, but it was after qualifying. Next comment from the Irish Pixie. To report a police investigation is not finding anyone guilty. He is innocent until proven guilty. Hence the investigation. If it was not reported in the press, it would be called a cover-up. There is so much information about men that are in high testosterone jobs and domestic abuse. Cops are one group that have huge incidents of domestic violence, so I can see that this may be true of anyone involved, racing, boxing, and of course football. It isn't a given, of course, but when aggression is part of your job description, it could be hard to leave that at the job. So this person is saying, well, I'm not saying he's guilty, but if he did beat on her, I can understand why. It's just part of his job. He couldn't leave it at the office. So I'm not saying he did it, but if he did, I understand from the job. Brothers and sisters, I'm just going straight down the line reading what the Yahoo commenters are saying. And it kind of makes you wonder, why does this sound so different from when we're talking about black males accused of the same thing? You can't make it 2 comments before they start making monkey comments and ape comments and thug comments and put him in jail comments. They don't have to read anything. But all of a sudden, it's a white race car driver, and all of a sudden you can't find anybody who is assuming that he's guilty and saying that NASCAR needs to suspend him, remove him. You can't find anybody that says they need to take action against him out of the gate to avoid the appearance of impropriety. Brothers and sisters, where are the street harassment people? Where is Holla Back? Where is the young Gamucci to go walking down the street with her damn camera through the hood, as if she's ever done that in her life? Where's Gloria Allred? Where is the New York Times to ask, what are we gonna do about these people with the race cars with the beer companies on them? What are we going to do about them? What new laws do we need to make for this NASCAR crowd? What are we gonna do? Where are the people to demand that his advertisers leave their team? Where are the people who are going to demand that some sort of action be taken against Stuart Haas, against anybody? Next comment. Well, I'm sorry, to the person who made there. There were a few people who wanted to take issue with that. But just there. Next person responds, I'm sorry, but if I were assaulted at Dover, everyone at the Speedway would know. The police would have been there within minutes. For her to come forward after 6 weeks does her a disservice if it's true. It looks like she was holding it over Kurt's head, possibly for a payout. If it's a lie, she's a spiteful expletive. Either way, she loses. Someone responds to his comment, domestic violence is something you report ASAP, waiting for what maybe some dollars or maybe something else. As far as the public knowing until an arrest, I feel this is completely wrong in the police department to let out to the media. Media don't care who they hurt. They just want the scoop. True or false does not matter in the news. Someone named Joyce responds after that. As someone who's been in this situation, I can tell you it's not easy to admit someone you thought you cared about isn't what he pretended to be. You are embarrassed and feeling ashamed. Most women never admit to this common situation, and those who do quite often take a long time to get the courage. And we don't know that something might have been said or done to discourage her too. Someone responds to her, who is surprised to hear Joyce K was in such a situation? Anybody that has read a few of her comments has to wonder how she could have a relationship. But it figures it would be with someone that would be happy to abuse her. Someone responded to him, George, number one, your comment is way out of line. Not only do you have no right to judge her, to condone her abuse is abhorrent. You make me sick. The next comment in the comments section says, not a surprise as he's a wacko. We've seen his childish behavior for years on the track, and to think it would be any different in private would be naive. Now, do you see how long you had to go before you got to somebody who had a negative comment to actually post? A straight negative comment. He's a wacko, childish, making assumptions that he's guilty. Look how far you had to dig before you ran into one. Look how far you had to go. Next comment, it didn't last long though. Next comment, this is what women do. I've been there. Going to kill the man's career because they didn't get what they want. In his trailer, she said, and then took this long to complain? Let's remember Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. This woman keeps that dress for a long time. Used it when she needed it. Most domestic violence cases are done right then and there. You get assaulted, you call the police. To use the domestic violence thing so much later means nothing. Next comment. If this happened in September, she files her complaint in November. They publish this today, and the hearing is set for December? Huh? If this had truly happened, you can bet your sweet tail end that this girl, me, would have called the police the minute I got out of the bus. BS. Next comment. The PC police are going to invade NASCAR. NFL players are the start. Every major sport is going to start seeing more of this. Welcome to the age of attacking men in professions women can't compete in. Hockey, baseball, football, basketball, NASCAR, and basically any other sport. More women who babysit for a living harm children mentally and physically than any of these sports combined. They just don't get paid very well, so no one's going to go after them. No one is jealous of a single mom who watches 7 kids a day by trade. Next comment, well, if he bashed her head into a wall 3 times, the bruises will speak loud and clear. No bruises equals no case, in my opinion. Next comment, sounds like a woman scorned that she lost her chance to be Mrs. NASCAR champion and the fame and fortune that accompanies such. Furthermore, why did she wait over a month? Did it take that long to fabricate and believe the story she was to tell? If she was truly slammed into a wall a number of times, why did no one on the bus she claims to have ran to come forward to notify anyone? I'm not dismissing domestic violence, but too many times we see women who cry wolf because they seek revenge. Next comment from someone named Elizabeth. My question is, why did she wait, 5 or 6 weeks to press charges? I have to say that this might be a little payback from her, because having an attorney contact Bush for money and then going to the police. Somebody else the next commenter said, love NASCAR in the 70s and 80s. Now it's just a bunch of rich spoiled babies acting like idiots. Not sure what to think of that. Next comment from Sue M. Next comment, why did she wait 38 days to file a complaint? Most women, especially ones with her status and means, would have called the police immediately. The next comment's not really germane. Somebody trying to be a smart aleck. Next comment after that, women cannot be trusted to tell the truth. I slept with this woman for months, and the one time my condom broke, she claimed weeks later to be pregnant. I never told her I had a vasectomy, and she insisted she was having my baby. I have never looked at women the same. Next comment. Same old story. A woman can accuse a guy of most anything, get his pick and name in the papers and in the spotlight, no matter if there's anything there or not. Why can't names in domestic and sexual cases be kept private until the police and prosecutors know what's going on, and then if there's a case, release the names? This is just unfair for a guy to have his reputation smeared before knowing what took place. We need to change this. Next comment, Lisa. Kurt may not be well liked here, but wait for the facts before condemning. Just because someone shows that they are tough on the outside does not mean they can be labeled as an abuser. How do you know she didn't instigate or provoke so that she could use it in her favor? There must be a reason for being in a relationship that long without being married, you know? Now, I can go on for a while here, okay? I can go on for a while. The comments just keep going. And they keep going. I just read to you all those comments just going straight down the line. Keeps going. And it keeps going. Somebody contact Mr. Fish and inform him this is white privilege. This is what white privilege is, sir. Whether you make $800 a month or $8 million a month, this is your equality and equivalence of privilege, sir. Since nobody seemed to inform you or enlighten you about that, that is white privilege, sir. Having the ability to stand next to a black male, and you both may have beat up your girlfriends, but one of you actually gets assumed innocent, and the other one is guilty before people even hear what it was that you were accused of doing. They just assume that you are guilty because you fit the racial profile. At least the one in their heads. We don't need facts. We don't need truth. We don't need to hear anything else. And they will come out in force and defend you. That is white privilege. You don't see Yahoo digging into this. You don't see people up here trying to find out what happened. You don't see anybody demanding his sponsors' heads on a platter. You don't see a big media circus coming out of this. You don't see any of that. That is because this is the benefit of white privilege. If they were black, they'd be demanding video. They'd be demanding people's cell phone videos. Somebody would have shown up at TMZ. TMZ would be beating in the doors because they would want the video. They'd be offering top dollar. They would want that. They'd be all over that. That is the way that it works. This is white privilege. This is how it functions. Somebody did not inform Mr. Fish that that's the way it actually happens. But that's because he already knows. He knows. And Yahoo knows. They all know what it is. And what you all don't understand is that, yeah, they're going to print the story because that's their job. But the problem is not do they print the story. The problem is do they follow it. Are they going to go on a jihad? Is anybody demanding Mr. Bush's criminal record? Is anybody talking about a criminal record? That story didn't even say that he has no prior convictions or no prior arrests. The story doesn't even say that. So what we can safely assume is that they didn't even ask. They didn't even ask if he has any prior history of doing something like this. They didn't even ask it. They're going to publish this, and this will be the last time that you hear about it. They're not going to talk about it anymore. They're going to publish this, and then they're going to publish whatever the resolution of it is. And that's all. That's all. They're going to publish this, and then they're going to move on to whatever the resolution is. And then we can get back to racing. Then we can get back to racing. As a matter of fact, not only will they get back to it, it's probably not going to interrupt his racing, by the way. It's probably never going to even interrupt it. Nobody's going to demand that he get out of his car. Nobody's going to demand that he be suspended. Nobody's going to demand to take him off the track. Nobody's going to demand to take away his sponsorships. Nobody's going to demand to take away the sponsorships from Stewart Haas Racing. Nobody is going to demand any immediate action. Ray Rice, gotta have it now. Adrian Peterson, gotta have it now. All the other players over the summer, gotta have it now. Jameis Winston, I think his name is, gotta have it now. We have to have action against black males now. We need to see nothing else. We will take action against you now as if you are guilty, and we'll figure out the rest later. Chad Ochocinco, gotta have action against you now. We will take action against you today, and then we will figure out if the action is justified later. But you see, this is about smearing your name first. We gotta smear you first because you are black. And you see, some folk might have let you in, but there are a number of you that it's okay for us to flick off. It's perfectly fine. That is how you maintain white supremacy. Random acts of terrorism, a constant air and a constant environment of terrorism against people. That's how you maintain it. That is what white privilege is. Having the ability to terrorize and victimize others, and you are fully aware that that is not going to happen to you because you are white. That is white privilege. That's what it is. And did you all notice that it didn't take a second of work? It didn't require a single paycheck. It didn't cost a dime. You have it. You have it your whole life. You did nothing to gain it, and you can never lose it. And it can never be taken away from you. Never. Under any circumstances, even Heidi Klum is not going to lose her white privilege. She will be moved to a lower level of white privilege because she married a black man, but she is never going to sink to the level of a black female. That ain't gonna happen. White privilege is lifetime guaranteed. And the beneficiaries of it know that, but you have to understand that this talk that there is no white privilege is code for everything that we do to victimize you now is okay. Because understand, he didn't say a word about defending black people from victimization by police, black people from victimization in job hiring, black people from victimization in loans, black people from victimization in housing, black people from victimization in schools. He didn't mention any of those things. Why? Because as a white man, he doesn't suffer from any of that. He just wants to discuss his little old Social Security check. Let me tell you something here, buddy. Let me just make this very, very clear for you. I want to make this clear in no uncertain terms. If you are a white man in America and you are 50 plus years old and you are struggling financially, that's on you. Let me just lay it out for you. Because I know I got a documentary coming out named 7 a.m., but let me tell you what happened at 9 a.m. Buddy, if you 50 years old and white and struggling, that is your fault insurance. Not no fault insurance. That's your fault. Buddy, that's on you. Those are decisions that you made. This system is set up, built by your people, engineered to favor you at every step of the way. They've got safety nets under safety nets for people like you. They got safety nets under safety nets. You've got support systems behind support systems. You have to really work to be a white person who loses in America. You gotta work for that. That don't just happen. You are a white person who would not allow other people to help you get back on your feet. That's what happened to you. You are a white man who squandered a lot of opportunities and made a lot of mistakes and said no to a lot of people. So spare me that one. White privilege is not something you can even revoke. You can't even revoke your white privilege. Why? Because it's established by the group. You did nothing to create it. You did nothing to gain it. Therefore, you cannot reject it or revoke it. No, buddy, if that's the way it turned out, you did a lot of things to end up there. That's your story. You did a lot of stuff to end up in that position. That's what happened to you. That's how it went down for you. We got folk out here struggling and striving and can't get nothing. Nah, buddy, you've made a lot of choices. And even in his screed going on there, medical problems. I got medical problems. Man, I got black folk out here going to work on dialysis. I got black people out here going to work on dialysis. But you want to tell me about your problems. Because you can't get the type of temp job that you want that accommodates your medical condition. Ain't no police picking him up for vagrancy. No landlords threatening to throw him out because we don't like your kind around here. Nobody doing that. And obviously things are going pretty well because you've got the ability to get to the internet and whine about your situation on examiner.com and put up article after article about it. These long ass articles, practically a book. That's what you got time to do. But you want me to lend a sympathetic ear, and my people are out here getting literally strangled to death in the middle of the street in New York City. Literally being strangled in Staten Island to death. Literally being strangled in Brooklyn to death. Literally. But you want me to believe that you not having the type of temp job you want is equivalent to a black man being strangled and murdered in the street by police. By the way, has Officer Daniel Pantaleo been charged yet, anybody? He murdered Eric Garner months ago. Has Daniel Pantaleo been charged yet? Has Darren Wilson been charged yet? I think Mr. Fish wanted to talk about the color of body orifices. Mr. Fish might be in for a bit of a surprise. I suggest he stop asking about that because he just might be in for a bit of a shock for himself. Because, brother, you do have white privilege, as has been explained and articulated on this broadcast tonight, and I could go on much, much longer. Much longer. But unlike you, Mr. Fish, you have the luxury of white privilege allowing you to get on the internet and do that. I got to get out here and hustle and build and make it happen. So you see, I don't have the luxury of being able to sit there and refute that for hours on end. But when 7 a.m. is over, I'm gonna get right back on it. I do damn well promise you that. So you can rest easy for a couple more weeks, and then I'm going to be right back on you. Now, brothers and sisters, you don't have to like Black Authority. You don't have to like everything I say. You don't have to like the way that I say it, but why would you not? In any case, you don't have to like everything you hear here, but you damn well better believe, whether you like it or not, they are closing ranks. They are preparing all of the rationales that they need to tell themselves. This is a guy who's trying to butch himself up and puff himself up so that what he does next to black folk, he can say to himself, it's not my fault. Whatever he gets or however black folk are victimized around him, he is trying to rationalize to himself and trying to salve his own conscience and appease his own conscience and ease his own conscience and say that, well, that's not my fault. It wasn't anything that I did. It was nothing that I could do to prevent it. That's not on me. That's on them. That's what he's trying to say. It's not on me. It's on them. It's not my fault. It's their fault. That's not my fault. That's their fault. It is not on me. And I'm telling you that there is not even an undercurrent anymore. Brothers and sisters, it's not an undercurrent, it is a groundswell. And the reason, and I'm going to say this here tonight, the reason why Barack Obama was elected president and so many people saw a way to turn that to their advantage was because they said that now we've elected a black person, somewhat, president. We are declaring white supremacy and racism in America officially dead. So whatever happens to you people next, you can't blame it on white supremacy or racism because this event covers us for everything. And now they're going to go in on you. They are already putting into place the rationalizations that they're going to tell themselves, all the sweet little lies they're going to tell themselves that are going to make whatever they do to you from here on in okay. We've elected a black president. You got black governors. You got black mayors. Magic Johnson owns a baseball team, kinda. So whatever we do to you from here on in, you can't call it racism or white supremacy. Thus, you cannot call foul. By definition, if it is not racism or white supremacy, you can't cry foul for it. You can't. By definition, you can't do it. If there is no racism and there is no white supremacy, all you can say is that there was an incident today. All you can say is that what happened to Eric Garner was an incident, and Michael Brown, and Jordan Russell Davis, and Trayvon Martin. They're all just incidents. There is no real cause behind it. Thus, no harm, no foul. Okay, plenty of harm, but there'll still be no foul. And that's what they're doing, brothers and sisters. You were warned about this years ago. You were warned about this years ago. Now, the next question that idiots and the ignorant will ask is, what is the solution? If somebody hears what I just said here tonight, knowing where they're at, and they ask what's the solution, understand that person is saying, I'm scared to damn death. What am I going to do? Somebody tell me that I can pray my way out of it. Somebody tell me I can hide my head under a rock and deny my way out of it. Brothers and sisters, there is only one solution to racism. There is only one solution to oppression. There is only one solution to systematic white supremacy. The answer to white supremacy isn't begging. It isn't borrowing. It isn't praying. It isn't marching. It isn't protesting. It isn't caterwauling. It isn't complaining. It isn't demonstrating. It isn't posting up on Facebook. And it's not trying to call into your local radio station to complain. The solution to white privilege and white supremacy is black empowerment. That is the solution. Power, wealth, and influence. Because you see, brothers and sisters, we are never going to be able to get people to not like us because we are black. That is just part of their human conditioning. They will always hate and fear you because you are black. It is a fool's errand to try to get them to like you. And that's what they've done, is they fooled so many of you into believing that the solution to white racism is white acceptance. Now, isn't that a damn ruse? Now, isn't that a con job? Haven't you been taken? They have convinced you that the solution to white supremacy is white acceptance. That white supremacy will go away if you start behaving in a manner that makes you non-threatening, and if you just accept your place in America on their terms. Did you also notice that nothing Mr. Fish said in his tirade said anything about how black people could get out of the situation that they were in? Did you notice he said nothing about that? Not a word in there about how black folk can get out of the situation. Because the bottom line is that the reason that when black people are gunned down, you don't hear the reason why Republicans, you would think they'd be all over gun rights for black folk. They hate big government. Talking about these police departments, downsizing police departments, but when it comes to that, they love big government. They adore big government. You have white folk come out in droves to support big government when the big government is the police department, because they understand that police is code word for nigger control. And that is what the police department is for. And they all understand its purpose. Adherents to this white supremacist philosophy understand the purpose of it. So they're not going to come out against that. They're not going to talk against the mechanisms that keep you where you are. They'll nibble around the edges, but only at the things that actually destabilize you. They are not going to strike at the heart and the core of the problem. They're not doing that. They are not going to do anything that upsets the balance of power of white supremacy. Not going to happen. You can tell yourself it will, but it won't. Not now, not ever. Not now, not ever. They will never do that. It will never happen. You will never convince them to go along with that. Not today, not tomorrow, not next year. They are not going to go along with that. So this is how you get this convoluted talk. He is trying to psychologically disarm you so that you will lower your defenses. But he's not saying a single word that destabilizes white supremacy or white privilege. And it's time for you to understand that that is how empowerment works. He is doing his part in his little corner to bolster and defend the cause. I've explained to you all tonight how it works. Now it's your turn. You can accept this new reality, or you can get marched off into oblivion. It's going to be your choice. But they've circled the wagons. If you were under any illusions about that, brothers and sisters, they have circled the wagons. And what we are about to experience is a world at the beginning of the 21st century that looks identical to the world at the end of the 19th century. America at the beginning of the 21st century is about to start looking like America at the end of the 19th. And the problem is that even your poor whites will have more privilege and advantages than you will. Now, you're going to make a choice whether you're going to allow that to happen. And you're going to make that choice now. You already know what our choice is. And this concludes tonight's broadcast of the BlackChannel.net radio. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. And until next time, brothers and sisters from around the world, remember, black is the future, and the future is uncompromising.